Yeah, so like Chris said, we still have 4 more points to get through, and we have less than 15 minutes. So I'm not going to try to rush through all of it, but I probably will move a little bit quicker through points 3 and 4, and then spend hopefully most of the rest of the time talking about point 5, because I feel like there's some really valuable key takeaways from that lesson that we learned. And so lesson 3 that we learned was to aim for more sites rather than less when you are designing your project and deciding how many sites to have. And we just had discussion about, they said DSP protocol said to have 3 sites of good management and 3 sites of poor management. And you heard Chris and Alexandra talk about how they had 9 sites total. So they went above and beyond what DSP protocol said they should have, but they said it was a good thing overall. And I think that this is just kind of outlining why that was a good thing that they did that. So they were able to help account for some of the treatment variability and the uncertainty that we were just talking about that are associated with utilizing these real life working farms where it's not a research farm where everything is controlled and under your control so that you can account for everything. And so having more sites so that you can help account for some of that variability is important, because the more sites that we have, so the more reps that we're able to have for these projects, it'll increase our statistical power. And even if we're not using it to run statistics, it'll still help to increase the confidence that we can have in our results that we obtain from this. So that's why I think it's important. So I just want to highlight, like we said, that we did have 9 sites across Rockingham County that Alexandra showed us earlier. And I just want to show you briefly, about those 9 sites. So we had 5 that were rotationally grazed, and then we had 4 that were continuously grazed. And then as Alexandra showed us in the site layout, we had 3 pet-owns per site. And so that gave us a pretty good setup. We felt like we really did have enough sites. However, the part that we were lacking on is, like we said, we didn't have enough background knowledge about the management history on our sites. And so if you don't know enough management history about your sites, more sites doesn't necessarily solve your problem. So this lesson learned is important. It's important, but in order for it to have value, we have to have done this second point correctly too. So we have to have good management history so that we can have more confidence in our results and aim for more sites to give us that. So the next point is that when you are deciding what assessments you want to do, you need to carefully select your assessments. And the biggest part of that is knowing your purpose. Why are you doing this DSP project? Because not every DSP project should involve the same assessments because they have different purposes. And so it's important to take that into consideration when you're trying to pick what assessments you're going to be doing in your project. It's also important to know your resources because there can be a lot of limitations due to funding, due to time, due to labor. Different assessments require different amounts of each of these. So it's really important to take that into account because soil health testing is very expensive. And so in a lot of cases, the best use of this limited funds will be to look at more sites, but cut back on the number of assessments per site. So that gives us the confidence that we need by having more sites. We don't necessarily have to run every single assessment on each site. We need to carefully select and match those to our purpose and carefully select and match those to the resources that we have available. And so in the Valley DSP project, I just want to talk a little bit about how we determine which assessments to conduct. And so primarily Alexandra followed the national headquarters, national DSP guidance. And as she mentioned earlier, typically the DSP projects that are going to be using the more intensive tier are going to use the Kellogg Soil Survey Lab to run the DSP samples, but that wasn't an option for a project because of COVID. They were 1.5 years behind on samples, and so it wasn't really a realistic option for us. And so while Alexandra was originally wanted to do the intensive tier project, which she showed earlier, she had to switch to the intermediate tier, which, like she said, focused more on like physical properties and not quite as many lab tests. And so we did the intermediate tier, and then we added other assessments based on, you know, what our priorities were and what our preferences were. And we added more assessments based on what we had the capability to actually have run through our partners and utilizing partner resources too. So we felt like we did a good job at this, that we selected the assessments well, that matched with our priorities, our purpose, and with our resources. And so just to give you a brief look at this, the national headquarters DSP listed these on the intermediate tier. And then with, you know, in Virginia, NRCS, Alexandra, we added on these additional tests. And the only reason we were able to add on these additional tests is because our partners at Virginia Tech and Dr. Franz Lubers, and, you know, they allowed us to do this. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this slide going in depth about why we chose each of these assessments and what they mean. That's going to be held off for another one of the other presentations when we're talking about our assessment results and why we measured what we did and what it looks like. So I don't want to get into that right now.